Hello, it's Adedoyin here, and in today's video, I'm going to be telling you about my personal experience with regards to how I've been able to niche my comms career. This video is a build up to the post that I did on my blog about how to position yourself for a specialist comms role. If you've read the 2023 Africa PR and Comms report, you'll see that more and more there is a demand, an increasing demand for communications professionals who have specialist skills in different industries and sectors. So in that article, I talked about faith-based communication, climate change communications, yes, ESG, things that are very topical, that are technical, that require people that have strong communication skills, but also have that technical knowledge. So if you're in a place in your career where you're thinking of niching down, you want to specialize, a question or a key concern that people have is how financially rewarding specialization is, especially if it's not a very popular field. I'm going to just be sharing my experience, and I hope that you can take out the valuable bits and bobs from this if you really want to transition and focus on specializing your career. Like I always say, if you're at the beginning stages of your comms career, I think it's very important for you to generalize, because what that does for you is it helps you to broaden your skills. You have an understanding of different areas of comms and the different competencies, because what you want to avoid is to specialize and then, because things change, right? You don't really know what's going to happen in 3 or 5 years. And then if 5 years or 8 years you want to pivot, you then find it hard because you don't have some of the basic skills or competencies that are required to make that pivot. So I usually just advise young professionals, try and do the generalist approach, get all the broad skills and competencies, and then as you rise, as you know yourself better, as you see what you like and what you don't like, you can then make that decision to specialize. And you can specialize in a particular area of comms, or you can specialize in a particular field or industry. This video will be particularly useful. To be honest, it will be particularly useful if you want to specialize in a particular industry or a particular area of comms, because I've done both. So grab your tea, coffee, and all of the good stuff, and let's dive into the story. So for those of you that have read my book, you know that, hey, I entered into this comms world very cluelessly. My official first role in communications was as a brand communications manager at a faith-based organization. And I remember the first day, I'm like, what am I doing here? So I had to rely on research, and that's why I always advocate, like, you must always be able to research. You must know how to find information, even when you don't know the answers, even when you feel stuck, you must be able to get those answers. So I remember using the first week to just do some research, and I just saw a lot about church communications. I had no idea such a thing existed. I was so blown away. There was a particular website called Church Fuel. Not only did they have useful information, they had templates, campaign ideas. Now, obviously, it was more tailored to those in the global world. But one thing I have learned is that you can learn what other people are doing in other parts of the world, and then you can tweak it and tailor it to your part. What's important is having that underlying understanding of what it is that they've done and what they have achieved. So there I was, starting in the new role, and thankfully I had a very fantastic boss that was open-minded. I would take the things that I would learn, I would try some things will work, some things won't work, and I figured it out as I was going. And he was very open, and he was very gracious and graceful with the mistakes and all. I know not everybody will have that kind of boss or opportunity, but that was what happened to me, and that allowed me to grow my skills in church communications. Now, what then began to happen as I deepened my expertise is that I started to see that there was a gap. There were things that people didn't know that were specific to communicating for a faith-based organization, because you're not selling a product or a service, right? And you're not just trying to say, come to church. You're talking to people about God. You're talking to people about Jesus. You're talking to people about different topics. So a church talks on marriage, talks on life, talks on faith, talks on health, it's so many things. And then usually when you work with a faith-based organization, there's the church and there's the person leading the church. So you have to then segment the two of them. It's a lot of work. You segment the two of them and you have to establish, okay, what is this person's core focus? What are they strong on? Is it leadership? Is it relationship? Is it faith? Is it healing? And then create the content. And then there's a lot of content that comes out of church. So you're having to look at, okay, how do I take this content and then put it in such a way that it meets the needs of the people? So one of the things I remember I did, because I realized that, my pastor at the time, he loves to pray. I mean, I guess most pastors love to pray, but he was really known for his prayer. So I thought about how to convert that into online content. And then we created every Monday prayers that he would put up. And the next thing I remember was I wanted to think about how to make him more accessible to the people. He was already accessible, but I wanted people to feel like they had a one-on-one personal contact with him. And this was the time before Instagram Live came on and all of that, or IG stories came on. So I had to ask myself, how would I do this? So one thing that we did was on Twitter, we started the Ask Rev series. So I can't remember what day it was, but I think it was between 12 and 1, you could ask him anything. Now that's easily done with Instagram stories. Then we had to use Twitter to do it. It was just a way of getting people to ask their questions, because if you're in church, and a big church for that matter, you may not be able to see the set man or the senior pastor interact with him on a one-on-one basis. Even if you book a meeting, there may be a long wait time, but that was a way to collapse, the bridges. And it really, really worked. So this was me learning, trying out different things, but I also had to understand the context of faith-based organization. I had to understand the context of church, meeting the people, their needs. Another thing is the audience, because you have multiple sets of audience. And if you watched my bite-sized comms course on strategic communications, you know that your audience cannot be everybody, but church is one of those places you think, the gospel and the good news of Jesus is for everybody, right? But no, when you're communicating on behalf of a church, your audience is not everybody. So there's a need to segment. You have communications for the people in the church, and then you're also thinking about for the people outside of the church who do not know God, right? So you have to be able to segment what kind of content and information do these people need, and then you're looking at the content itself and thinking about how you can repurpose it. So a message, for example, can be used as a podcast. You can get sound bites from it. You can get quotes from it. You can turn that into a newsletter. You can turn that into a devotional. So from a Sunday message, for example, I can create 1 week worth of newsletters or devotionals. We didn't send out newsletters, we sent out devotionals, but that's 1 week worth of devotional content. So there was a lot of learning, a lot of content creation, and it also requires you to be able to think on your feet, think about what's happening in the lives of the people. So for example, are people right now, there's prices of things are going high. What can the man of God say to comfort people, to help people in this time where maybe hope is low? So there's a lot of thinking, but that really, really, really excited me. And while I wasn't sure, remember, if you've read my book, I entered all of this in very, very cluelessly. I was just trying to figure my way. So I didn't even know if I wanted to specialize in church communications. But as God will have it, while I was in that role, I got an opportunity to start managing social media for Leading Ladies Africa. That then moved me into the world of social impact and gender. And I started. Now, Leading Ladies Africa, being a social impact organization, very different from a faith-based organization. Comms is still the same, but the thinking is different. The idea is, okay, we want to empower women. We want to tell stories that shows a woman that, look, other women are doing XYZ. You can also do it. We wanted women to know that they had the ability, even if they didn't have all of the resources. We wanted them to feel that they were supported through the trainings that LLA offered, the activities, the programs, and the content. So one of the things that I really had to do was research stories, and LLA is African. So I had to research stories of women doing great things across the continent. And it wasn't about popular women, right? It was just about, this woman is doing something fantastic. that is trackable. It might have just been something for her community, but it's making an impact. She's making a difference, and we will tell those stories. I remember there was a particular time, maybe 2 years after I'd written about a story of an entrepreneur that was based in South Africa. She read that post 2 years after I put it up, because I'd finished the engagement with LLA at the time, and she wrote to me that reading the blog post really encouraged her, because she was in such a down season post-pandemic, but it just really encouraged her. And I was like, wow, that's the impact of the stories. That's really what we wanted to do. We wanted people to feel hope, but also feel empowered, and give them information. So you can see that the tactics are the same, but what we were trying to achieve was different. So the approach needed to be different. So I was doing a lot more research, thinking about what do women need, what are the challenges, and how can we help them? Thinking about the different groups of women. So you have the entrepreneurs, you have the career women. And the more I went into that field, the more I realized, wow, there's a lot to be done. And what I particularly liked about working with LLA was I could see the impact of the work that I was doing. Every post you put up, somebody is encouraged, somebody sends a message that this has inspired them to start something. There were testimonials and success stories, just even from the content. And that really made me happy. Now, I'll say this right here, that I'm a firm believer that you need to tailor your career according to your values. I know I've had this conversation with people. So somebody is working in a tobacco company that doesn't smoke, doesn't believe in smoking. And I'm like, why are you there? This is my thinking. If you're working in an organization that your values are not aligned, you don't believe in what the organization is doing, how are you going to effectively communicate on behalf of that organization? Because one of the things that is required for you to be an effective communicator is that you must immerse yourself in the subject matter, in the essence, in everything that organization embodies, right? So if I'm going to be reading content, I'm going to be just diving deep into it, then there's going to be some sort of disconnect with my values if I'm going deeper and deeper into this organization that I don't believe in what they're doing. And so personally, I've always tailored my career to things that I believe in. I don't take on briefs that don't align with my values. I don't take on briefs that don't align with, what I do or don't do. So I don't smoke. I have never smoked. And if you see me working with a tobacco company, something must be really wrong, because I can't relate, right? So I just thought to add that there, that as you specialize, make sure that you're specializing in a field that really resonates with you, that you're passionate about, because it really, really does make a difference. It cannot just be about money and say, oh, well, climate change it is, let's go into climate change. No, you should go into it because you are actually passionate about climate change. I know some people that when they talk about climate change and plastic pollution, you can feel the passion. I'm like, oh wow, somebody can be this passionate about plastic. So really be passionate about that specialist area. Anyway, back to the story. When I worked with LLA, it resonated with everything that, I hold dear. My values, the kind of impact that I would want to have, it really just resonated with me. And the next thing that happened in my career was that I had the opportunity to volunteer with Wimbies. Now, two things happened at that same time, which is 2016. Again, this is why I say that my career has been divinely orchestrated, because as the opportunity to volunteer with Wimbies. So for those of you who don't know, Wimbies is the Women in Management, Business and Public Service that is based in Lagos, and it's an advocacy empowerment kind of platform. Now, when that opportunity opened up, I also had the opportunity to volunteer with the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, which is a think tank and policy advocacy group. So that also opened up the world of policy communications and advocacy to me. But I will come back to the NESG story. Now, I didn't pursue any of these things deliberately. It just happened divinely. So Wimbies was a build up to what I was doing in LLA, and I was I loved what I did with Wimbies. But coming into Wimbies, I had written to one of the past chairpersons to just really say that I feel like more could have been done with their communications, especially with regards to the annual conference that they have. And I was brought in. Now, for me, over the years, I have implemented a number of conferences, and I think I'm going to do a separate video on how you should think about communications for a conference. What typically you would find is that in the weeks, not even months, most times is in the weeks leading to the conference, you see information about the speaker, they're trying to get people to register. And then in the days getting towards the conference, you now have heavy on the panels, information about who is speaking, and it's a lot. And then in the 2 days, you may or may not see a lot of active engagement. And then after the conference, there's silence. Some people do a recap, and that's it until the next year. What I wanted them to do was to be able to engage people, to be able to convey the value of the conference, because you telling people to register for something is not enough. You need to show them why it's important. You need to show them what they stand to gain, and that's by showcasing the different kinds of conversations that take place. So with the communications officer in-house, we did a communication strategy, social media strategy, content strategy. And I remember that year, somebody that was in the UK saw all the content online and decided to come back to Nigeria to attend the conference. And that was a big win for the social media team. I think I volunteered for Wimbies for about two years. And in that period, I got more women focused platforms and initiatives coming to me to consult for them in terms of strategy, because at that time I had gained expertise. Should I say expertise? I guess it's expertise in terms of women focused initiatives, what they needed, how they would communicate. And one beautiful thing about it is that they were different. So you had platforms that were focused on women in career, some focused on women's health, some focused on entrepreneurs. So just helping them to just craft out their strategies. But I hope you can see that the common thread is really understanding the nuance of that particular field, that particular organization, what is required, what are the outcomes, what are the things that would be markers of success, and then you using your skills as a communicator to build on that and then deliver on the expected outcomes. And then some of them are more technical than others. So I will move on to the NESG, because the NESG was more technical. It was about policy that involved various sectors. There was health, there was education, sports, there was just different things, governance. And in the first year that I was a volunteer, it was specifically for the Nigerian Economic Summit, which usually holds in Abuja. And I was part of the social media team. So what we needed to do was take the content, make it very nice for a social media audience, because like I said, content was really technical, but they really wanted more young people and a wide base of people beyond those in Abuja to just jump into the conversation. So we had to take that technical content and break it down in language that people would understand. So that even required an understanding of what people were saying, and it was very, very, very technical, but I enjoyed it. I'm somebody that I'm a very, very voracious reader. I like technical subject matter, but imagine if you're not so technically inclined, you have to be able to immerse yourself into that space so that you can understand what they're saying, break it down, and then communicate it in language that other people will understand. So that was what I had to do for the NESG. And then subsequent conferences, because I think I went for 2 or 3, and it used to take place every year, I would have to go and rapporteur. For example, I remember there was one Nigerian-Morocco relations side event. You have to listen to what they're saying, take the notes, do the report in such a way that it accurately captures what was said. So it wasn't about regurgitating word for word, but summarizing the meat of the conversation. So you really needed to understand what was being discussed. There were times I didn't understand certain things, especially where it was about macroeconomics, but I would ask questions. Again, I think one of our biggest weapons or tools to leverage as communicators always will be our research skills and ability to be able to ask the right questions and ask for help when you need it. But then you also have to open your mind to be able to understand it. And then from there, I interned with the NESG for about 5 months just before the pandemic, just because I knew that this was a space I wanted to operate in as well. And then I got to learn more about policy advocacy, learning about PPD, public policy dialogue, learned about all of that. And I'm still in the process of learning. I actually wanted to do a master's degree in policy so that I can really understand it, because for me, where I am in my career now, I want to serve as an advisor either to the African Union, World Trade Organization, but I need to have a very deep understanding of policy. So that's my story so far. That's where I am. Now, I told you that there are two ways. You can either niche to a particular industry or you can niche to a particular area of comms. Now, in terms of niching to a particular area of comms, I realized that I love strategy creation. I'm great at creating strategy. The execution part is not that I'm not great at it, but it can be very frustrating. You've created this strategy that requires X amount, then you submit to the client slashes your budget. There are all of these frustrations that just lengthens the execution process. It makes it less exciting for me, and then by the time you're delivering, you have to make lemons out of lemonade, and I didn't really like it. Of course, I did it for almost 8 years, but as I got to the end of 2020, 2021, I told myself I just want to focus on communication strategy and training. So advisory. Hey, you're having a challenge with your comms. I come in, I look at it, I create your strategy, I train your comms team, and I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy sharing knowledge. And I just thought, let me focus on what I enjoy doing. Am I making less money than if I'm focusing on all the other areas? I don't know, but I'm happy. I love what I do. So you need to think about what's important to you, right? What do you want to achieve? For me, being in control of my time is very important. Doing what I love is very important. And being where God needs me to be is also very important. So I have optimized my career for all of this. So I hope this story that I've shared with you has given you some tips and idea on how you can also begin to niche your own career. What I have learned is I've just been open to the opportunities. So NESG, for example, I didn't pursue that. It was just a phone call. Oh, Adedoyin, would you be interested? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And then I was there and I realized that, oh, this is very interesting. But it wasn't until I think the first summit that I attended was in 2016. It wasn't until 2019 that I decided that, okay, wow, maybe policy communications is something that I should look into, because I saw a real gap. And I guess that also resonates with who I am. I love to provide solutions. So where there's a gap, where there's a need, you will often find me thinking about, oh, what solution can I provide? And I saw that there was a solution, there was a need rather, not just for Nigeria, but in terms of Africa as a whole. And that ties into the work that I'm doing at the Comms Avenue, just saying, how can we change the narrative? How can communications professionals support the policymakers, support the institutions such as the AU to change the narrative, to use our skills as communicators to tell better stories, more positive stories, and all of that great stuff. So everything I've done really resonates with who I am. It's resonates with what I want to achieve and what I believe my assignment here on earth is. So you do with that information what is useful for you. If, for example, you want to go into energy, start immersing yourself content in that space, go for their conferences. Just last week, I went for the Africa Social Impact Summit, and it was good to just connect with people from development organizations, multilateral organizations from literally across Africa, because you can't just stay in your comms bubble and say, okay, I want to transition into energy. You have to be able to, go and explore. And you'll find more tips in the blog post that I put up on my website. And I'll also put the link here in YouTube. So that's it from me today. If you found this useful, please share with colleagues. Remember, the idea is that we're all growing together, we're learning together, we're growing together, and really just improving the practice of comms, not just for ourselves, but for all our colleagues across the continent. Thank you for watching.